And I am grateful to be with everyone. And we're going to go ahead and start as we usually do by just taking some breaths, calling in through your nose and out through your mouth, and in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as we breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, we invite our mind, body, and energy to relax, 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 relax. Let your toes relax and your feet relax. Knees relax and your hips relax. Breathing in and out. Invite your hands to relax and your elbows to relax. Chest to relax and your shoulders to relax. Throat to relax and your face to relax. And your mind, body, and energy. Relax, 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 relax. And as we move into this space of complete relaxation, we open up our energies to the ancestors, loved ones, and friends to come together today to heal and guide us and lift us to the highest version of ourselves in the light of the universe, so we may hear what we need to hear, know what we need to know, connect how we need to connect, and be what we need to be for our highest and best good, and the highest and best good of all involved, as we open up space to heal and harmonize. And I'd like to take a moment to just sit in this space of relaxation, becoming aware of your mind, body, and energy, and opening up your heart-centered space to sense, feel, connect with the universal source energy of pure, absolute, unconditional love. And as you feel those golden energies, pure, absolute, unconditional love, vibrating with that vibration of your soul, beating with the beat of your heart in harmony. And as we feel that pure, absolute, unconditional love expand throughout every cell in our being, we can feel it move out beyond us, that universal source energy, not only filling and fulfilling us with pure, absolute, unconditional love, but feel that golden energy expanding throughout your neighborhood. And as you feel it pulsating and vibrating with the universal truth, pure, absolute, unconditional love, expanding beyond you, beyond your neighborhood, into the whole region, and feeling that pulsating and vibrating golden rays of pure, absolute, unconditional love, touching every cell and every being, not only in your neighborhood, not only in your region, but all the way through the entire state. Feeling that golden energy of pure, absolute, unconditional love vibrating and pulsating through the universal source energy, not only to you and your neighborhood, your region, and your state, but throughout the entire country. Every cell of every being touched and connected to this pure, absolute, unconditional love energy of the universe. And as we feel that energy glowing and growing and amplifying and connecting to that universal source energy, we feel that golden energy of absolute, unconditional, pure, universal love expand to the entire planet. Every being on the planet being enveloped in, supported by, connected to, and touched with pure, absolute, unconditional love energy of the universe. And as we feel that pulsating and vibrating, as we feel all beings, all cells of every being connected to and supported by the universal, pure, absolute, unconditional love. We feel the entire universe connected to, supported by this love. Pure, absolute, unconditional love of the universe, vibrating and pulsating through every cell of every being, through space, place, and time, past, present, and future, supported by and connected to pure, absolute, unconditional love energy of the universe. And as we feel the expansiveness of this energy, we also feel it connected to our heart center, allowing ourselves to tune in, allowing ourselves to accept and acknowledge this pure, absolute, unconditional love energy of the universe. And then we'll sit here in this space, breathing in and out, allowing it to integrate, inviting it to become our constant truth, the base energy at which all of our energies exist from. We ask that the universe continues to guide and support all beings with this pure, absolute, unconditional love energy. And then we slowly come back to this space and place, back to this moment in time, still holding it in our hearts, still connecting to it within ourselves, still allowing this to move forward as our base. And slowly coming back to awareness, staying in whatever position supports you and connects with you to continue to receive the message, allowing yourself the guidance and support, the pure, absolute, unconditional energy of the universe. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about our unclouded heart, how we create space to be and see and connect clearly without the distortions of the world and the busy mind. And there are lots of things, especially right now, that can take us from our center. And let me take a little drink. And as we tune into those understandings, we want to pay attention to how we give distraction power. And if we can tune into that center space, that pure unconditional love that we just touched and felt within us, then we can have a sturdy center to tune into that feeling, even when distraction comes knocking at our door. And if we can recognize we are humans living on the planet and we've made these human agreements that we're going to have these experiences, then the first layer of that distraction can kind of be taken away, because when we think about it, a lot of times when something happens that we find outrageous or confusing or upsetting, a lot of times our first reaction is like, I can't believe that this happened. And then we have to we lean back into disillusionment and confusion and distraction and trying to figure out why and making sense of something that doesn't make sense. And then we come into the feeling. And so part of recognizing, if we can stay in that center, if we can stay in that space of all things I connect to, have a thread of love connected to them, then we don't fall back so far of going like, how can this be real? The disillusionment. And while, I probably say it 20 times a day, I'm not saying I don't say it. I'm saying, like, how do we practice a little bit more gentle awareness, a little bit more presence, a little bit more clarity from our heart center, so we can then move into whatever's meant to be next? Because we know, like, we made these promises, we made these agreements to be human and have human experiences. And so to be shocked or taken off guard or confused why we're having human experiences only kind of complicates things. So we can say, okay, yes, there's a human experience. How do I stay in my heart center of love and understand it? And, one of my big truths that I try and remind everyone is, acceptance is not condoning. So if we recognize, yes, there's an uncomfortable human experience, I accept that this is where we are right now, then it's not saying it's okay that you should be experiencing that, should being a weird word, but not saying like it's I'm in agreement with this uncomfortable experience, or I'm allowing this uncomfortable experience. What it's really saying is, like, if we can understand that, if we start where we are in acceptance, we have awareness. I'm aware I'm uncomfortable. I accept that this is the ingredients of this uncomfortableness. Then we can move into the choices, actions, decisions, focuses, possessions, to allow us to do whatever our part is. But I think that part of the kind of shock and awe that we're all constantly connected to, that clouds up the spaces of our heart, because we want it to be this and what's really showing up is that. And so we're not in acceptance. We're pulling the threads of our energy and we're stretching ourselves out of our center, because we have the actuality in what's going on and the disbelief in what's going on, or the wishing that it was something different. And so really what I'd like to focus on and invite everyone to focus on is recognizing where you're setting your center and how you are working in those spaces. And we know we've talked a lot about alignment, and alignment is when our thoughts and our actions, our choices and decisions, our values and our beliefs all point towards the same thing. And that doesn't mean the world has to point with us, because quite honestly, if I'm going to be super, super honest, the world's never always going to point exactly where you're pointing. And so, how you stay in your alignment, no matter what is happening around you, and it's very easy to talk about and very difficult to do, because we have strong emotions and our emotions come up and they want to crash like a wave and take us in a different pattern. But what we really want to think about is how we can honor how we feel while still honoring who we are, where we are, our center at the same time, and give ourselves permission to recognize that those two truths happen at the same time. It's not either what I wish the world was or what the world is. It's the world is, and I'm going to make choices, actions, and decisions to kind of tune in to the intention that I have for the world. And then we're not pulled in the negative direction. We stay in our center and we say, oh, okay, well, if what I want is cake and what I have is ingredients, I can either be sad that all I have are ingredients, or I can be in acceptance and recognize, how do I put them together to create what I'm trying to create. And so, obviously, when it's an uncomfortable thing in the world, we don't see it as cake, but the fact is still true, where if we are having an uncomfortable experience, I can tell you the universe somewhere, even if you have to go on a treasure hunt, has given you the ingredients to shift yourself and those around you and whatever work you're meant to be doing towards the intention that you're looking for. You just have to look at the ingredients and see how you put them together in order to help support wherever you're trying to go. And sometimes it's tough. And particularly today, I'm sure a lot of people are having a heavy heart and a clouded viewpoint. But what we want to recognize is, if I chase that clouded viewpoint, if my energy goes where my attention flows and my attention is into that, hopeless position of confusion and believing that, that I don't have the ingredients, then I will support that. But if I meet myself where I am, honor the way that I feel, while also recognizing that in my center, I have this ability to be able to gather what I need to help feel better, to help soothe the emotions. And it allows us to expand beyond that sort of like, I'm in disbelief, now I came to my center, and then something else happens and now I'm in disbelief again, and then I'm in my center, and it doesn't allow us to progress into the ingredient gathering, or progress, or feel like what the work we're doing is actually moving us forward. And so that's where I wanted to just talk a little bit about how we clear the clutter around the real work, because it doesn't mean the real work doesn't exist, but if it's piled behind a lot of clutter, then it's really, we have to declutter before we can even get to the work, and then it feels like we haven't made a lot of accomplishments. So I'd like to break it into just a few. I love to talk in the trilogy: mental, emotional, physical, and energetic, and just bring up some awarenesses for you to be able to take through your week and pay attention to. And then we'll kind of go into a little bit of where to feel empowered, or how to feel empowered. And then as the new Love Church opens up, then what we'll do is stop recording and then move into conversation about it. But so focusing on the mental emotional body, decluttering the mental emotional body. One powerful thing that we can do is recognize where our stories are. And so if we've found safe space in the past and being confused, because being confused allows us to give up our agency. It gives up accountability. If I'm confused about what's going on, I'm not in charge. I have no power here, and so that can have been a safety net at some point in the world, but also recognizing if what we want is our center and to know what's ours and what's not, then we want to pay attention to where our experiences from the past are shaping my perception of this present moment. And so where does that come in? And recognizing like our emotional body is our solar plexus, heart center, and throat chakra. And so those three energies have a lot to do with communication. It is emotional communication, verbal communication, feeling seen and heard, love and understanding, empowerment, and willpower. All of that gets its information from our emotional body. So, how do we feel present in that emotional position and support those energies, while also knowing that our emotional memory comes into play? Like what, and what is memory? Memory can be connected to reflection and, oh, remember the time that felt so good. But memory also can try and help us guard from feeling that way again in the future, through kind of telling a really big tale of emotion around that. And so if we can understand that, if we feel emotional confusion as a signal or a sign in where we are, then instead of judging it or using another negative emotion, we just want to slow down and give ourselves grace and say, what's under this feeling? Like what goes below, what's the root base of this? If this emotional confusion is creating a rustling in the leaves, like how do I get underneath that and practice self-compassion and grace and tune into clarity? The other thing I will say a million times, and this goes with thoughts and emotions, is that we can't stop our first thought or emotion. We can't control those, but we do have power and empowerment over the second. So what we do with that is really important. And if we're in our center, then we can catch that and go under it and recognize it. If we're in that wobbly space of feeling pushed around by our experiences, then we're likely to find ourselves like a kite flying in the air when it comes to thoughts and emotions. So that's where that coming into center is important. And then we look at the physical body when it comes to connecting, staying in our center and recognizing, the embodiment is very important to anything, like recognizing, this physical vehicle, while it may get us where we're going, is also a really great messenger. It allows us to feel and sense if something doesn't feel right in our body, then we can allow ourselves to soften a little bit and ask my body what it needs. Recognize, like, what can I do to reestablish a feeling of security or to tune into something that makes me feel comfortable as I'm processing this emotion, or drink a glass of water and bring yourself into that center position, put your feet in the grass, the physical things that you can do to energetically support. And the carnal self is the self that gets its information from the physical, from the physical body. And the carnal self is that root, sacral, solar plexus, and its intuition is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So when the body says, hey, pay attention, it's usually meant to be to bring us into a sense of security. And so those energies work with that. It's the sacral's fun, frivolity, play, creativity, sensuality, sexuality, and also self-trust, and that root of safety and security, and the solar plexus, willpower and empowerment that we talked about. And so all of that has to do with how we feel grounded, how we feel tuned in. And so what we can connect to and focus on is grounding in, not only when we feel uncomfortable, or that, oh my gosh, I can't believe that is happening, is going on, but grounding in on a regular basis. If I have a grounding practice that keeps me rooted into feeling safe and secure, then when something happens that may feel confusing, I don't chase it. It doesn't push me off my balance. It just makes me recognize, like, oh, okay, I better root in, like find that center, like tune in that way. And then the energy body, and the energy body works with the throat, third eye, crown, and seat of the soul chakras. And the energetic body is where our intuition of prophecy is. And I'm not sure if I said what the heart center was, but it's knowing, like women's intuition, gut instinct. And so the intuition of the higher self, the energy body, allows us prophecy. We can, whether it's deja vu, dreams, seeing, I can see that happening, I can't see that happening sort of energy, that comes from those upper chakras. And one of the challenges is that we also have that third eye, which is insight, understanding, and knowledge. And so, sometimes needing the proof, needing it to make sense, needing it to follow some sort of logic, can get stuck, lodged in the third eye. And so recognizing, how do we take that linear position, which has, everything has a purpose and a position. It's not saying logic is bad, but recognizing, like, okay, well, am I balancing logic with wisdom? Am I balancing that information with intuition? Am I creating a center where both parts of the planning mind, the focusing mind, and the intention-based mind come into play, and they're both supported in that, and we give them both space to be able to have a connection to how we're handling things. And so it allows us to release the need to completely understand, because if we tune into what's ours and where I am, as long as I understand myself, as long as I understand how I'm feeling in connection to it, as long as I understand where it goes in mine, not in a selfish way, well, I don't have to have empathy for others, in a way that says, no, like, well, if I get me, then I get how I am a part or a piece of this. I don't have to get how the other person gets it or how that happens. I don't have to convince them. I can say, well, if I'm in my center and I'm strong and I feel connected to that, then that allows me to stay in those spaces. And what I would say is, like, why are we doing this? And we've been working on the heart-centered why for a few months, and we're going to keep through the rest of the year. And the why behind that is the base of the podcast and everything I believe in. When the one is strengthened, the sum is strengthened. And so if I'm in my center and I have a conversation with two friends, then they're more likely to come to their center and connect with me. If I'm not in my center and I connect with two friends and we discuss, what's happening in the world, like we're all likely to spin out into another space, and we're feeding the confusion. We're feeding the misunderstanding. And so if I can stay in my center and say, this is how I feel, this is where I am, like this is my connection, and what's mine and what's not, then it allows me to be that expansive force. I'm not blowing, following, I'm tuning in. And so I wanted to bring all of that up because it's really easy to go into that shock and awe, take us off our center, lose that connection with the divine, because that's the other thing that being in our center does, is like holds us in this space of connection with the divine. And then we're kind of forcing, and we know anything forced has to be fixed, a solution versus receiving and staying in tune and staying balanced in those spaces. So I'm always a fan of the awareness, acceptance, action, focus. I talk about it all the time. So the first thing you want to do is come into awareness. Take this next week to see how often you might go like, oh no, I can't believe that just, how often do you get knocked off your center? No judgment. Awareness is about just paying attention, seeing when it happens, noticing if there are times when you're more likely to do it, certain topics or certain situations where it comes forward a little bit easier and where you can stand stronger in your center, and just awareness. And then the second week, pay attention to acceptance of this. And acceptance isn't, like I said, it's not condoning. We're not like, oh, well, I guess I'm just gonna get off my center in that topic. It's more along the lines of like, okay, well, at some point in my life that served me good. And so thank you for serving me at some point in my life, but I no longer need this anymore. And so just accept that it had a purpose, acknowledge and give gratitude to it. Because the third week, what we're going to do is we're going to create a change action. So then when you're like, something happens and you're like, I can't believe that was what just happened in the world, like then we'll feel it, catch the second emotion, catch the second position, tune into the mind, body, and energy, accept that like shock and awe gave us, did something at some point for us. And then we move into change behavior and we say, oh, okay, well, what would I like to do instead? Would I like to become more informed? Would I like to do an action to, help heal myself or someone else? What would I like to do once I'm moving into action that is up to me, something that tunes in, to help me bring not only solution to myself, but healing to the world or whatever it is. And then that allows for you to honor all the spaces without just continuing to clutter up. You're not just like piling up another, like, can't believe that happened. And then, oh, can't believe that happened. And then we have this like hoarder's wall of confusion, disbelief, and feeling overwhelmed, and we can't sort through to what's behind that or what we do about it. So by sorting through it, each time it happens, we clear the clutter first by the process, and then as we move into it becoming our natural neutral, we create the change behavior. So I hope that was helpful to everyone. And if you're on, stay on and we'll have a conversation. But for those of you who are watching back, I hope that you are all well and that you feel peace, that you feel free, that you are blessed and whole, and that you always be your soul.